Most television headlines these days are entirely centered around the streaming wars. How many billion subscribers did Disney Plus earn today? Which creative and exciting new project got cancelled after one season? Who sacrificed the most barnyard animals to gain the rights to stream The Office? But a few of us non-boomer suckers out there still pay for cable.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
It came bundled with my internet nearly a decade ago, and I quickly felt that I actually discovered more new shows, watched more old movies, and had easier access to several older shows that aren't streaming anywhere. For example, there is no way to legally watch Batman the Animated Series in Canada, so I've been PVRing and rewatching that incredible series for the first time since I was a child. Paying for cable has also been helpful for being able to watch weekly episodes of shows you might otherwise have to wait for. And most recently for me, that's been Better Call Saul, the prequel spin-off of Breaking Bad that somehow lives up to the promise of the original series, both of which aired first on the cable network AMC. Originally standing for American Movie Classics, they long ago de-emphasized the origins of that title and have shifted to premium original shows. Through 15 years of original programming, odds are you've heard of and very likely seen at least one of their hit shows. There was a window of time where new episodes of Mad Men, Breaking Bad, and The Walking Dead were all airing in the same year. That overlap was probably their peak, but there has been plenty to still like about AMC in the time since. Hell on Wheels had a strong 5-season run, Preacher always seemed underappreciated, Into the Badlands looks cool and has been on my list for years, and now Better Call Saul and the fittingly shambling corpse of The Walking Dead have carried them through the last few years. But with both of these series coming to an end, what lies ahead for this network? Cable cutting isn't going anywhere. I still wouldn't really recommend cable to anyone, it just kinda works for me. But after watching Netflix make seemingly endless bad decisions, losing subscribers left and right, the competition coming from the streaming side of things is now beginning to feel more uncertain. Slowly but surely, every single one of these services is jacking up their prices, claiming it's still so undervalued. Oh, what a bargain. Thank you. Follow that up with Discovery swooping in, completely dismantling WB and spiking HBO Plus into the ground, and suddenly cable feels more worth it than it has in a decade. It's apparent none of these companies value what the consumers and fans actually want. I know they're trying to run a business, you've got to earn money to stay afloat, but television is an artistic field. It can't only be crunching numbers, there has to be some artistic integrity there. And it's left me wondering if there's perhaps a window of opportunity for a company like AMC to raise their status and somewhat unexpectedly outlive simultaneously losing both Daryl and Huel. I'm telling you, the wrong character's getting a spin-off. Now, I haven't used AMC Plus myself, but I have heard horrible things. So I'm not here to defend their streaming platform or argue that they should even have one at all. And personally, I don't think having their own streaming service adds any value. They're probably wasting so much money on that rather than simply putting it back into their shows. Just license out your stuff, pocket the cash, try not to split your resources like that. They're currently a minuscule fish in the ocean. There's not a lot of room for them. Ignoring this ill-advised venture, I want to reflect on AMC's history, the types of programming they favor, and why it's worked for them so far. AMC has never been as prestigious or carrying the overall high quality of HBO. There's really no touching that towering ceiling they've set, but with multiple must-watch greatest of all time shows under AMC's belt, it'd be wrong to count them out entirely. Networks like Showtime and more recently FX also have fairly strong and confident legs in this race. Showtime has loads of bankable, long-running, enjoyable shows, although they're rarely groundbreaking and most of their best shows appear to be behind them. FX has a more diverse catalog of creative, surprisingly high-quality shows, and seem to be only continuing to grow. I made a full video praising Dave, and still highly recommend that one. But we are probably also rounding the corner of Big Papa Disney pressing his thumb down on FX and taking away that creative freedom. I hope Disney isn't so stupid as to squash a good thing they have going.
Oh, that's right. I ate all the pizza. I drank all the beer.
But we've seen far worse decisions made very recently, and they absolutely have a track record of Disneyfying anything that they own. As for HBO, while their streaming service is getting stripped for parts and a few promising titles are now canned, they won't be going anywhere anytime soon. So, same as it's been for the entirety of the 21st century, it's pretty well a race for second place in the premium cable network space. I didn't know how fun that sentence was going to be to say until I was reading it off my script. In the wake of these streaming executives dropping the ball like a wadded up clump of C4 into a volcano, the future of Western TV is fairly bleak. They're all destroying their reputations, canceling well-loved projects from dedicated visionaries, throwing away series, old and new, to save a buck, then devaluing themselves and resorting to the lowest common denominator of cheap reality TV. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Survivor or The Amazing Race. I've seen every season of Top Chef. There's plenty of room for reality TV out there, but that can't be all there is. Then, over here, we have AMC, a network that's remained consistently in the pop culture lexicon for 15 years. Mad Men was their first foray into premium cable, and they had an immediate critical darling on their hands, helping pave the way for a golden era of television we are still in. The funny thing is Matthew Weiner, who wrote an essentially perfect pilot, pitched Mad Men to HBO in 2000. They loved it so much that they hired him to write for The Sopranos. Years later, Weiner tried to sell it to Showtime, before it finally landed at AMC, airing in 2007. As is often necessary for a new series, Mad Men required someone to take a chance. And those two massive networks, for whatever reasons, weren't willing to take it. AMC network president Ed Carroll said in a New York Times interview, "The network was looking for distinction in launching its first original series, and we took a bet that quality would win out over formulaic mass appeal. A strategy they've stuck with ever since." In 2017, after Mad Men had already concluded, former HBO CEO Richard Plepler shared that he considers passing on Mad Men to be one of his greatest regrets from his time at HBO. That's easy to say in hindsight, but it does beg the question, would the show even be the same on a different network? The creative team assembled might have been tweaked, different levels of creative control given, all the way down to casting could have all come out different. Mad Men is what it is because people like Carroll and the team at AMC saw a vision for Mad Men that Plepler clearly didn't. But I digress, that thought experiment could probably be a video of its own. While it's pretty well impossible for a network to have nothing but hits, this early success set a bar for the network. For 15 years now, AMC has attempted to use quality first as their divining rod for new shows. Looking at what they've put out in that time, there's a clear pattern of betting on talented individuals with bold ideas. Here we can look at Breaking Bad. AMC was eager to expand their original programming and quietly add what is arguably the best show of all time to their list.
You're goddamn right.
A show so consistent that even its quote worst episode is still a damn masterpiece. There's an older video of mine making that argument, and I'd love for any Breaking Bad fans out there to see it. This was another series passed on by Showtime, this time because they already had Weeds. And similarly, FX passed because they were developing Dirt. It was also put in front of HBO, not much is known about why they didn't pick it up. And I bet all of them are still kicking themselves over that miss. Their path forward for The Walking Dead was much more straightforward. The entire series was pre-ordered based on the strength of the source material, the television scripts, and Darabont's involvement. Having Frank Darabont, the director of The Shawshank Redemption, was a big deal. His movie-length pilot for the series is still among the best parts of the entire franchise. He was only the showrunner for one season, and it sounds like that breakup was far from mutual. AMC pushing out the creator of a show seems to be the exception rather than the rule. Lasting 11 seasons, The Walking Dead may feel borderline irritating at this point. They aren't letting go anytime soon, green-lighting endless spin-offs. And I can hardly blame them. They were ahead of the curve on the zombie media revival, found astronomical success basically overnight, all growing to a size no one ever really expected. Of course they're gonna continue to milk that cash cow, and hopefully use that as a safety net while taking riskier ventures. And while I've been massively checked out of that series for a long time now, I might still watch Tales of the Walking Dead. An anthology series seems fun and like an accessible way to revisit this half-forgotten franchise without needing to catch up on everything else. On the subject of catching up, I'd love to someday make a massive video or series of videos reviewing the entire 11-season run. I originally stopped watching after the frustrating season 6 cliffhanger, but I think it'd be a fun excuse to come back to it with a more analytical eye and see where everything eventually wound up. The Walking Dead has been an anchor for AMC, allowing them to weather a few other unsuccessful series attempts, but also holding them in place and likely harming their ability to branch out. The main series is finally ending, but the franchise will remain a staple for the foreseeable future. And now, very recently, AMC had the staggering loss of Better Call Saul. At the same time as we've had our crowd-pleasing horror pulp of The Walking Dead, we were being treated to a spin-off prequel that somehow managed to maintain the unprecedented quality of Breaking Bad. In what world did a spin-off for Saul Goodman feel warranted or at all necessary? Similar to The Walking Dead, it felt like an unwillingness to let go, dragging things out and simply trying to milk their methverse. Only for it to blow away expectations, completely stand on its own, tell an immaculate story that cleverly layers together characters and elements of Breaking Bad in a way that elevates both series, taking its time and reveling in the artistry of filmmaking. The way that show slowly escalated through 6 shockingly compelling seasons only for it to blow the barn doors off for the last couple really cements the insane legacy of Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould. My understanding is that Better Call Saul was these two being given a blank check, full creative control, and the runway to tell the full story they intended. And that faith in them paid off big time. So AMC has been in great shape for a while now. At all times in the last 15 years, having at least one, usually 2 must-watch shows. But now that they're losing a pair of their most bankable, most successful series that they've been riding high on for so long, it calls their stability into question. Pretty well, none of the other shows they've greenlit since the time Saul started have lasted more than a couple seasons. There hasn't been much to tune into from AMC outside those tentpoles, which is going to leave them prone to a full collapse. but I genuinely think their future is looking bright. They appear to be exploring new ideas, trying to give the right people the right opportunities, and seeing what sticks. They are also seemingly more willing than most to grant additional seasons to shows they believe in, as well as the ones that the fans rally behind. I want to look at their lineup of dramas in the last 15 years to help make that point. In that time, they have aired 22 dramas, starting with Mad Men. Only 4 of them ended after 1 season. Another 4 only lasted 2 seasons. All 3 of their new shows in 2022 have already been renewed for second seasons. The pattern here shows their willingness to see things through to 3 or often 4 seasons. AMC invests in talent and trusts them to deliver. They have an understanding that most shows go through growing pains and tend to improve in their sophomore season. So if they believed in an idea enough to approve it for 1 season, why not give it that additional opportunity to prove itself? Also going against the industry norms, AMC appears to value consistency, not requiring series to endlessly grow. Netflix cancels a show if it doesn't get enough views in the first week. While AMC understands that in our modern age, that's not really how people watch TV, and most shows simply are not going to do big numbers right away. As a clear example, we can look at Breaking Bad. It sat in the same ballpark of viewers for 3 seasons. Very slowly climbing, it then leapt ahead for season 4 and 5. I don't know when it was first added to Netflix, but I'm guessing that gave it a bump. Then eventually ending the series with a season that more than tripled the viewers of season 1. People put off watching series until it's a few seasons deep. They want to know the quality is consistent, and more importantly, that it's actually being granted an ending. If I see that a well-loved series is ending on its own terms with a proper conclusion, I'm far more motivated to invest my time. I had never seen an episode of Veep while it was airing. A couple months ago, I decided to throw it on, knowing it had been well received across 7 seasons, and it was phenomenally funny. I can imagine watching that show through a few more times in my life. Breaking Bad's final season is a perfect example of why ending a show matters. The core fan base stayed committed throughout, and the more casual viewers and latecomers hopped on board once there was a stack of consistently high-praised seasons to binge, with those ever so patient latecomers hopping on board right at the end, only when it was known that the series was ending. How do more networks not realize how predictable these viewing habits are? We can look at Better Call Saul as a counterpoint. Its viewership started out high, coming off the good name of Breaking Bad. It actually managed to lose viewers each and every season. It's nowhere near as flashy or bombastic as Breaking Bad, and I'm sure many casual fans forgot about it. But AMC saw it through for the diehards, and now that pair of series will remain as essential viewing for decades to come. And if AMC wisens up and abandons their streaming platforms, they could rake in money, as literally every streaming platform fights ravenously for the rights to those 2 shows. I mean, come on, they let The Walking Dead run for 11 seasons? Obviously, they didn't map out a complete 11 seasons worth of storytelling. And they relatively quickly broke free of the source material to give themselves the freedom to do whatever they wanted with the franchise. 11 seasons happened to be as long as the viewers were willing to support it and the cast agreed to stay involved. That's a hell of a run. Dragging a series along like that may feel like a counter to my point about ending a show at the right time with a proper conclusion on good terms, but AMC did something else impressive here that I think deserves some praise. Rather than allowing their flagship show to die a slow and painful death destined to be forgotten forever, they attempted to course correct and maintain as much quality as they could. And while I didn't see the back half of the series, critical reception seems to indicate it mostly worked. The show was starting to dive around season 7, so what did they do? identified a talented individual from within the show's crew and promoted her to showrunner. The reception has been much stronger in these later seasons, and despite a plummeting viewership, agreed to give the series a proper send-off. Their desire to not sell out their reputation and to respect the fans led to an attempted revival of the show, giving it a new life, and yet again ending things properly. For anyone who watches the show now, it won't be immaculate perfection start to finish, but they recognized when things needed to change on their own and stuck with it. It makes me think of the typical sitcom approach seen in The Office, That 70s Show, or Scrubs. You start to lose some of your main cast, attempt some sort of half-hearted soft reboot, and they basically immediately give up on it. Following that same path forward, taking risks greenlighting shows, they took a risk in the smack dab middle of the series as well. Even mid-sized hits from AMC, like Halt and Catch Fire and Hell on Wheels, were treated well by the network, ending on their own terms and adding more properly completed series to their library. While I didn't see this one, it does sound like Into the Badlands was unfortunately left incomplete. It's only fair that I point out that they're not immune to abandoning well-received shows. But that feels like nothing compared to Netflix, where the majority of their original shows have already been forgotten for eternity after they left the show and fans high and dry. Why would you ever recommend a show that ends on a permanent cliffhanger? And now we can see they've created a scenario where people are unwilling to start most new Netflix originals. Why would you even bother if they're just gonna let you down? And less people are going to be willing to work with HBO after the way their creative teams have been treated recently. Meanwhile, at AMC, if the audience shows your show any love at all, 9 times out of 10 they'll reward you with a decent commitment worth of seasons, and likely ensure it receives a proper ending with plenty of warning given to the creative teams to properly wrap things up. It's about time a network valued giving shows a worthwhile ending. In an industry plagued by imitation, safe choices, and business-first mindsets, it excites me to see AMC doubling down on their risk-taking, learning the right lessons in a sea of executives who seemed doomed to reliably do the opposite of what people are actually asking for. Breaking Bad was successful? We need more shows about drugs. Game of Thrones is a hot hit? Quick! Everyone greenlight as many fantasy shows as possible. AMC going against the grain and attempting to be the trendsetters makes me want to support them further. They've never once dumbed down a show and highly value their creators' visions. They trust and respect the viewer as much as they do the creators, and that's the #1 reason why I'll continue to watch almost any new show they debut. Look at something recent they've done like Soulmates. It's a not too distant future anthology from Brett Goldstein, who plays Roy Kent on Ted Lasso? What? I'm only just hearing of this. Like, why did they say yes to that? It was fairly poorly received. Barely anyone watched it, but I'll be damned if they didn't give it a second season regardless. Who else is taking risks like that? I haven't seen Lodge 49. In fact, today is the first I've ever heard of it doing my research here. It's one of only a few of AMC's comedies, starring Wyatt Russell, who I really like. It seems to have been very critically well received, yet had next to zero viewership. Like, as close to zero as you can really get. And they still gave it a second season. Unfortunately, it was cancelled after they failed to really move that needle, but they still gave it a shot. Then afterwards, still placing trust in that series' creator, Peter Ocko. Lodge 49 may have tanked, but they clearly liked this guy and allowed him to also develop the new dystopian sci-fi series Moonhaven. The trailer looked terrible, the reception is fairly mid, and guess what? Season 2 is coming. Nobody else runs a network this way. Sharing a mixture of poorly received and largely unwatched shows may not seem like it's tracing a very positive path forward, but what I want it to highlight is their willingness to gamble on a new idea and remain at the table even after they lose a few chips. And beyond these flops, I can now talk about their new hits and some promise shown for AMC's future. During the commercial breaks of Better Call Saul, they advertised Dark Winds. I saw that it was only 6 episodes long, has a 100% positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and was renewed for a second season. So I picked that one up and binged it in just a couple days. Keep in mind, 100% means everyone who saw it would recommend it. It doesn't mean it's a 100% perfect, flawless show. I think it has a bit of a ways to go, but yes, I absolutely would also recommend it, so that 100% does make sense. This is worth keeping an eye on. It was created by Graham Rowland, a Native American writer and producer, following Navajo police officers in the 1970s as they attempt to unravel a local mystery. Zahn McClarnon was born to play Officer Joe Leaphorn. This character is quietly intense, jaded, and weary, but also observant, patient, and resourceful, and they thankfully avoid the trope of him being some simmering asshole. Leaphorn is gentle with his family, cares about others, and is willing to admit his faults. I'm a huge sucker for a character that can be both serious and sensitive. He's dealing with a lot, but remains heroic, and is an easy protagonist to root for. I don't need some anti-hero or another Walter White to follow along with. We've been there, done that. It all adds up to a fantastic leading character, and Zahn McClarnon's performance alone makes this one worth checking out. Dark Winds is AMC returning to the desert again, but it's not remotely filmed in the same way. The cinematography carries a sense of love for the desert that brings out a beauty in the land. It's not treated as some hostile, barren wasteland. People live here and they're happy to do so. I will say, influences of shows like True Detective and even Breaking Bad hover over this show, but there are some truly bright glimmers throughout with a unique vision showing themselves often enough to have the show feel refreshingly different. The opening song and sequence have a sense of style that was immediately captivating and roped me in. I made sure to watch it for every single episode, and I wish that the episodes themselves matched that tone just a little more closely. I actually can't believe this series wasn't more talked about when Robert Redford and George R.R. Martin are producers on the show. What a crazy combination. The acting across some of the secondary characters could be a little spotty at times. There was room to sell the tension a little bit more, and I wish they had the confidence to linger just a little bit longer on some of the really stunning shots they achieved. But the leading actors were all excellent. There's some light supernatural mysticism sprinkled in, but it never distracts from anything else, and learning about the characters and their relationships alongside the story was really satisfying. Dark Winds is an adaptation of an old Tony Hillerman novel series dating back to the 70s, with plenty of stories to adapt. So here's hoping for an even stronger season 2. Who knew that hiring Native American writers to tell Native American stories would be a good idea? What a crazy concept. I have high hopes for this series, and hope it continues to carve out a distinct corner of the genre. Another AMC show that hasn't aired yet, but one I'm still looking forward to, is an adaptation of Interview with the Vampire. There's notably less Cruise and Pitt than I would like, but a gothic horror drama sounds like the exact sort of bold new direction they need to be heading. The trailer alone convinced me I need to check this one out. Those are 2 great examples to trust that AMC has more tricks up their sleeve. And something else crazy and daring that I've never seen a network do before is their unconventional plan to move forward from Better Call Saul. It's been confirmed that there will be no new spin-offs. So what's the next best thing? During those final episodes, AMC teased with no specifics whatsoever, simply using white text on a black screen, that while Saul and Gus would be gone, Bob Odenkirk and Giancarlo Esposito weren't going anywhere. It was announced that they would each be given starring roles in 2 entirely new projects. That's such a clever way to rope in long-term die-hard fans, banking on their starring actors' names alone. Odenkirk will star in the comedy Straight Man, while Esposito will lead the remake of the British drama The Driver. And you know damn well they aren't going to attach these bankable golden names to any old project. These are bound to be very carefully vetted, highly coveted projects picked specifically for them. So while AMC's biggest series are in the past, I see a way forward that builds on that success as long as they avoid the pitfall of trying to recreate any specific avenue of success. There is so much luck involved in the creation of anything new, and people can sniff a cash grab a mile away. I hope AMC continues to take risks, to give budgets and freedom to creative individuals, to support shows while they find their footing and slowly accumulate an audience, and most importantly, to never treat their fans like idiots. I highly recommend Dark Winds. This video low-key became a review for that series, but I'm excited to see what comes next for it. I hope this turns a few new people onto it. I'll definitely be checking out Interview with the Vampire, and I'll be keeping a close eye on Straight Man and Parish, and hope you do too, because I think they've earned it. It's been a long time since I've done one of these video essays where I attempt to take the pulse of Hollywood and look at other bits of pop culture patterns and trends. I watch a lot of TV, possibly too much, and try to follow this stuff as closely as I can. If that's your jam, I'll include a link in the end cards to another video like it detailing the growing trend of indie games being adapted into TV shows. I need you guys to watch these videos to validate my opinions. My ego is so fragile. Thank you all so much for watching. This was a lot of fun to make, and I hope to see you all again soon.